What is the deal, Panther fans? It's your boy, the Professor, a.k.a. Tony Dunn, and this is the C3 Podcast, brought to you by CarolinaCatChronicles.com. You can check us out every Tuesday night, live in full effect at 10 p.m., talking Carolina Panthers from the fan perspective. And I never do it without my homeboys. At least all of the tribe is here tonight. Joe, that freaking Puerto Rican, what is up, my man?
Tony, it is another Tuesday night, and it is time for the talk some Panthers football. I'm so excited about this week. I'm so looking forward to Sunday. This game is going to determine the rest of our season, I believe.
Ooh. Yeah, this is a way to turn it around. There's a lot riding. The stakes are high. I can't wait to write on the line piece this week because there's a lot on the line for the Carolina Panthers and the Seattle Seahawks. Coming off the bye. No bye, though, for Mel Mayock. That's right, Aaron Ford. He's out there in Portland scouting out enemy territory. What's up, man? Glad to have you on the show again.
What's up, my boys? How y'all doing?
We are pumped.
We are. We're ready.
I'm excited, man. I don't know about you guys, but I don't like bye weeks. This past Sunday was pretty freaking boring.
I agree.
Yeah.
You know, I tell you one thing though I like about the bye week is that I feel like so much energy I put into not only the Carolina Panthers but just NFL football in general, and I kind of find myself taking a week off a little bit from football. I still watch it, right? But do any of you guys kind of downshift a little bit in the bye week?
Oh man, I was actually playing golf up at Lake Tahoe during the games. I was just keeping up with my fantasy scores on my phone as I was playing. So.
Gosh, it's so tough, Aaron.
Somebody has to do it, brothers. You know, and I raised my hand. I said I'll handle it this week. So.
That was such a great sacrifice.
You're glad, yeah. I had a busy weekend. My little sister got married this week, and if you notice, not only is Mel in incognito in some dive hotel under FBI protection in enemy territory, but I've also gone incognito. There might be some movement in the Dunn home, so everybody out there, we're excited, but that also means I had to pull down my podcast center for a little while.
Well, is it true? Is it fact or fiction that somebody was coming to look at your house and you wouldn't let them come until you mowed your grass that hadn't been mowed in over 2 weeks?
That is fact. I said you cannot come here, and it's because it had rained and rained. It has been, Joey, it's pretty close to us building a boat. Like, there's a message out there.
Yeah, really.
And I think Mel said it. What do we need to start collecting or something?
Well, is it true that animals are starting to walk in pairs all around Greenville?
Yeah. 2 by 2.
I got a couple of them. I even caught an extra one. I got 3 of these little monsters running around my house that we're saving for that boat. We're glad everybody can join the show. It is episode 15.37. 37 episodes we've done since the close of the 2014 season. That's crazy. Massive consistency. Props to us. No bye week for us. And tonight's episode is going to be a great one. Will Carolina be sleepless in Seattle? We're coming off a bye. The Panthers have been sleepy coming off of byes. Historically, poor performance under Ron Rivera.
0-4.
0-4. Not a good record.
No.
Also, 0-4 against the Seattle Seahawks in the last 3 years in the 4 meetings. And that's who we got to play. Maybe we could put the nail in 2 coffins tonight or this week in Seattle. We'll find out if the Panthers can and how they can do so and why Seattle appears so vulnerable. From Seattle Seahawks beat writer Gregg Double G Ball from the Tacoma News and Tribune, who will join us at 15 after the hour, so in about 10 minutes. So we're going to pop right into the show, guys. But as always, you can tweet the show using the hashtag C3. Stick around for Gregg Bell, special guest, Seattle beat writer this week. Fact or Fiction coming hot this week. What's hot? Finish that thought. Ice Up picks are coming. Be sure to check us out on Twitter and follow us, download the podcast, and tell your friends. Check out Carolina Cat Chronicles. And while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and get started with our first segment, What's Hot in C3.
Good day, mate. Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
No, I'm just getting warmed up. Here's Charlie facing the fire, and there's George hiding in Big Daddy's pocket.
Tyler, because I spit hot fire.
It got flames through into this place.
What's hot on C3? Guys, the hottest story in Carolina right now is the return of two players, one being great, one being old. Luke Kuechly and Jericho Cotchery back on the field. It's been since week 1 we've seen Luke Kuechly. Somehow we're 4-0 without our greatest defensive player, our best defensive player. It's crazy. I almost feel like I have to say arguably our best defensive player with how great Josh Norman has been playing this season.
That'd be a good debate.
Yeah,
good debate. Yeah.
We'll have to get into that one. Joey, tell us how important is it that Luke Kuechly's back on the field going to Seattle?
Well, I think it's important because, one, he is the leader of the defense. Him and TD together really take charge of that defense. And secondarily, I think teams have begun to kind of catch on to AJ Klein's weaknesses, where he has trouble in his game, where the holes are in his game. So I think it's important that he's coming back for both of those reasons.
Mel, are you more excited that Jericho Cotchery is back since it's so bad, the wide receiver core, or are we just so happy to see that beautiful face of Luke Kuechly?
Well, Cotchery is a state guy, so you know I love him, but he's not the big play guy. So yeah, I think he gives a good safety valve and something that gives Cam some comfort. But let's face it, Seattle, they're struggling a little bit, but they're still an extremely powerful team, and they're a top tier team. The two things that make them strong on offense are their running game and Russell Wilson. So having our middle linebacker back to help stop that running game, whether it's Marshawn Lynch or Rawls or Fred Jackson, whoever it is, to have Luke manning the middle, as well as somebody as smart as Luke keeping an eye on Russell Wilson, it's going to help big time. It gives us a shot in this game.
Yeah, I think that you're finally going to get to see the linebacker core that's supposed to be out there for matches just like this one, right?
That's why we signed up Shaq Thompson in the draft.
That's exactly right. We didn't know, well, we did know by that point that Jimmy Graham wasn't going to be in the NFC South anymore, but it was for that athletic tight end that you need a guy that's big enough that can run with him, but is not a vulnerability to you in the run game as well. Shaq Thompson, I think, provides that added layer. But what you're going to really get is the Carolina Panthers are still running a nickel. They just happen to be running a nickel with a linebacker, an extra linebacker, instead of a cornerback.
Right, exactly.
And I know that's not what a nickel is. We all understand it, that it's an extra 5 DBs out there. But that's what you have to be when you've got Jimmy Graham on the field. The run game, they're going to be trying to get Marshawn Lynch back into the groove. They've got to reestablish. Russell Wilson has been under so much duress this season. You have to slow that down with a running attack, and you need the shot caller out there. Joey, I think you were on to something. Maybe they're figuring out A.J. Klein. What have been his weaknesses that you're starting to see manifest as time goes on?
I think just coverage. He's a good player sideline to sideline, but when you start to go north and south on the field, he can definitely get taken advantage of in the coverage aspect of it. If we're in a zone, he can play a zone okay, but if we have to man up for any reason, he becomes something of a liability. And just out of place.
He's slow.
Yeah.
He's slower. He's not that bad. You wonder if he would start on some other teams
Probably.
at middle linebacker. There's probably a shot. He's a good NFL player. He seems to do better against the run. He's made some plays, but you can see there's some vulnerabilities there. Mel, tell us this, though, and as we look more at Cotchery, this has been an offense that struggled to find an identity outside of Cam Newton. The Carolina Panthers have struggled to run the ball. There has been Ted Ginn Jr. has been the closest thing we've had to a receiver that is any good out of this group. Is Cotchery something that Carolina needs back, or are things so bad that we're excited about Cotchery being back?
I think it's a little bit of both. But one thing that is good, two other things that are good about our offense. One, Greg Olsen, always, right? Greg Olsen's a great Mr. Reliable for Cam Newton. And I think a nice surprise for us is our offensive line. What the third-rated offensive line, according to ProFootballFocus.com, in the league thus far.
That's crazy.
That's pretty awesome. I think our wide receivers just are not. We took a huge blow with KB being down, and I still have a lot of faith in Devin Funchess, but he tweeted out this week, trust the process, and that's what he keeps telling himself, that it's not happening overnight, but as the coaches become more and more comfortable with him and he becomes more and more of a first read, I think our wide receivers are only going to get better as the year goes on. You saw Ted Ginn step up, get 2 touchdowns in the last game. Cam's starting to get a little bit more comfort. I think we're only going to get better, but we got a huge test coming up in Seattle. No doubt about it.
Yeah. It might be our first real test, our first legit test.
According to everybody else, yeah.
My question is, you mentioned that the offensive line has played particularly well. Why is it that the Carolina Panthers have not been able to establish a running game outside Cam Newton?
Dude, I said it last week. My opinion is when you don't have a true blocking fullback and you don't have a top-tier blocking tight end and you hand the ball off to your running back when he's still standing still, you're not going to have a dominant run game. Our only run right now is with Cam Newton. But if we were to bring back, if I were the coach for the day, the GM for the day, if I were Dave Gettleman, I bring in Lee Ward, I play some traditional downhill running, and I see what we can do, because I think Remmers and Trey Turner and Ryan Khalil, that's a pretty daggum solid threesome right there. You put some traditional running there, I think we could do it.
Who's been running a fullback in the backfield a lot is Atlanta. Been having a lot of success with that.
I'm frustrated. That's one point of contention for me. I'm frustrated that we're not using somebody like Lee Ward.
Again, there's questions there. Joey, you mentioned that when we were talking in an earlier show tonight, Todd Gurley looks really great behind a terrible line. We've got a good line. Is this Jonathan Stewart showing signs of fatigue at 28 years old?
I don't think so. I don't think it's Jonathan Stewart's fault. I think he can't get beyond the line of scrimmage. Once he gets through the line into the defense side of the field, he does well. It's just he can't get beyond the line most of the time.
And a lot of that is because he's still standing still when Cam's putting it in his gut.
That's true.
It's just kind of an awkward run game, and I put that on Shula's shoulders.
Right, I agree. I think Shula has to do something to change it up. Obviously, what we're doing at the moment right now, or at least what we've done in the first 4 games, hasn't been working.
How do you fix that? Other than, I guess, the fullback, is that the answer?
That could be one answer. Also, we may need to look at our running style. We maybe need to go to like a zone read like the Falcons have done. Maybe that's what we need to do instead of running a lot of, the read option. We like the read option because Cam can take the ball.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, like you were saying last year, Tony, this isn't something we need to feature. It needs to be like highlighted.
Right. Yeah. Is that it's a weapon in the arsenal, not the most used weapon. Right. Another thing is that this might be something that I don't know how much we're going to have to watch Dave Gettleman in the future. And Mel, this is something that might fall into your ballpark a little bit when we come draft time, is maybe this is one of those things that we need to start looking at offensive linemen and running backs that thrive in the system that features this type of running attack. But like right now, I'd like to welcome Gregg Double G. I call you Double G. Ball from the Tacoma News and Tribune. Thank you for joining the C3 podcast. We talked to you last season before the Seattle game, and we're glad to have you back on the show.
Hi, guys. How's everything?
Greg, how are you, man?
I'm good.
Good.
We've been talking about this night for a long time, man. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Right on.
You're welcome. You might be setting me up for something I can't fulfill. That's okay.
Not at all. We have been. We love the insight into Shaq Thompson that you provided us. We've been watching him closely. We're actually hoping that he stands out, and this week is the week that we really see his true value as we get Luke Kuechly back, and then you put Shaq up against a guy like Jimmy Graham. But we brought you on because the Panthers, coming off a bye under Ron Rivera, were 0-4 off the week after a bye. We're 0-4 against Seattle in the last 3 years. We tend to do bad in these situations, two angles from that. But this might be the year. Seattle seemed to show some vulnerabilities. Could you tell us what the kind of general sense of about this team is right now? Are they trending up or down from this point after that loss against the Bengals?
Well, definitely I have to say down. They're definitely not the team they were even in February in the Super Bowl. And most of it is because the offensive line is not even what you recognize from all the times that Carolina has played them the last few years. They have a center who was a college defensive tackle just 4 years ago. He was a practice squad guard last year at this time. Drew Nowak. And the right tackle last year is a rookie, Justin Britt, who started both games against the Panthers, is now the starting left guard. The starting right tackle, replacing Britt, is Gary Gilliam. He was a college tight end for 3.5 years at Penn State, and he made the team last year as an undrafted rookie. All three of those guys I just met, or I should say two of those three, Nowak and Gilliam, are undrafted. J.R. Sweezy, the starting right guard, was undrafted.
From NC State.
He was from NC State.
There you go. Yes.
Russell Wilson, yes. And J.R. Sweezy was a defensive tackle at NC State.
Yes, he was.
Now he's an offensive lineman. So that is what the Seahawks do. They spend their money in the defensive secondary. They spend their money on Russell Wilson. They gave Wilson and Bobby Wagner $139 million in a span of 30 hours in August. So and you can't pay everybody in the NFL, you guys know. Mm-hmm. So where they skimp is at wide receiver and on the offensive line. And that's where, on the offensive line, John Schneider, the general manager, and Pete Carroll says, hey, Tom Cable, veteran line coach, go make these guys, these undrafted, cheap, young linemen, and make them offensive linemen in the NFL. And the Seahawks are paying the price for that.
Well, hey, one thing, let me just jump in there. One thing as far as wide receivers, a player that we had an eye on, and kind of my sweet spot with CarolinaCatChronicles.com is the draft. I'm kind of known as the draft guy. And one guy that we had an eye on in the draft was one Tyler Lockett, who is paying early dividends for you guys. Can you talk just a little bit about him and what he means to the team?
Yeah, he returned 2 kicks for touchdowns in his first 4 games, a kickoff return. 105 yards, set the team record in the home opener, and then the opener in St. Louis last month, he returned the first punt he touched for a touchdown. He was the NFC Special Teams Player of the Month for September, and he did it as a rookie. That's something that the Seahawks hadn't had in about a dozen years. What he's done, guys, is when the Seahawks drafted him in the third round, they traded 26 spots up in the third round and 3 picks to the Redskins to get him. And it was, okay, you're the punt returner and the kickoff returner because they were awful last year for Seattle. Mm-hmm. But once he got here, the coaches had no idea how good of a wide receiver he is. How polished
he's amazing.
He really is.
He is. The separation, he's not big, obviously, but he's so technically sound, and he's fast. And he catches the ball and goes and gets the ball and separates from defenders who are much bigger than he. And they were shocked, actually, about how good they knew he was a decent receiver. Of course, Kansas State's career leader. He broke his dad's records, Kevin. And he talked a lot about how he got to be such a good receiver from being around his dad, Kevin, and his uncle, who also played professional football and also played at Kansas State. And so he was around the craft from when he was a little tyke. And he was in Kansas State, Bill Snyder's way when he was growing up. And he got here and was better as a receiver than the Seahawks even imagined, and that's why he's the number 3 receiver behind Doug Baldwin and Jermaine Kearse, and the Seahawks go 3 wides even when they run the ball. So he's on the field. He's on the field about 75% of the time. Plus, he returns every kick.
Wow. The problem is you got to find how to use these weapons when you have them out. Going back though to when you had you were mentioning some things about this team trending up or down, and it comes back to that offensive line. Just a little piece of advice: stay away from NC State. That's the first thing that I'm getting from that. Sorry, me and Mel, me and Aaron, I'm an ECU guy, and right down the road. The other thing is, this sounds
they have a little brother complex. Just to give you an idea.
Oh gosh.
I was told a story when East Carolina rented or you borrowed the North Carolina State Stadium after a hurricane. I don't know how many years ago this was.
We were at that game.
Me and Joey were at that game.
Is it true that ECU's fans actually tore the stadium apart?
Yes.
Very true. We tore down the goalpost.
I think Tony actually has one of our seats from our stadium in his bathroom.
I was told they had to pay restitution to NC State.
Yeah, and then they wouldn't let us play there for a decade. I think that here's the problem, and just to add one more layer to that story, East Carolina we know how to party, right? And the thing is that at NC State the tailgate rules are different than they are at ECU.
Well, that's because at ECU they don't have rules.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Actually,
one thing in ECU's favor, it is a 3-to-1 woman-to-male ratio.
5-to-1.
5-to-1. Wow.
Yeah. Woo. Here's the thing: is at NC State they let you leave at halftime and tailgate some more, and that's where the problem came. But the other thing I was gonna say about other than the NC State thing is this sounds a little bit like the Panthers of 2014, starting 2 undrafted guys on the offensive line, playing musical chairs. Finding a guy named Nate Chandler who used to be a defensive tackle and trying him out on the offensive line. Is there any worries with the Seattle fan bases that maybe you can't do it this way?
They're starting to question that, and the very, very health of Russell Wilson has come into question the last few weeks. I mean, he got sacked 4 times by a winless Bears team at the time that hadn't had a sack all year coming into that game. He got sacked 6 times by the still only winless team in the NFL, the Detroit Lions, who were 24th in the league in sacks coming into that game. He got sacked 6 times by the Bengals on Sunday, and everyone said it was an improvement. And that's the state of the offensive line right now. He's been sacked 22 times in 4 games, and this is a team, guys, as you know, that doesn't pass a lot as the basis of their offense. They've had to pass more this year because they've trailed in games. But that wasn't the problem on Sunday in Cincinnati. That usually the Seahawks have done this for 3 or 4 years. They have not been able to pass block. Russell Wilson runs around, makes playground, improvisational, impossible plays, either with the run or the pass, and just bails out the offensive line. What's happening this year, the difference is they aren't run blocking either, not consistent. And now they did against Cincinnati to 200 yards, and that season-high 200 yards rushing, and And Thomas Rawls, the undrafted rookie who started in place the last 2 games for
He's been pretty impressive, yeah.
He's 169 yards. That's the most by a Seahawks and Sean Alexander in 2007.
Wow.
And now he's going to go back to the bench because Marshawn Lynch is going to return to practice on Thursday, and looks like he's going to start for the Seahawks against the Panthers.
That was one of our questions. So
yeah, there you go. Pete Carroll said yesterday that Lynch will go back to practice on Thursday off the strained hamstring. He hasn't practiced fully since September 19th, so he's well rested for sure, but it looks like he's going to start on Sunday.
Just to let you know that the Seattle offensive line, this is how bad it is. On top of the 22 sacks, 48% of Russell Wilson's dropbacks pass as he's received pressure, the highest in the NFL.
Is that all? 48%? It's got to be more than that. It has to be more than that. No, it's gotten so bad that there was a third down play in Cincinnati in overtime that he ducked before there was no rush coming, and he ducked the pressure that wasn't there, and it ruined the play, and they had to punt. And he has become almost gun shy.
Well, David Carrish, huh?
It is.
But one thing I'll say in his defense is his completion percentage under pressure, I believe, is the highest in the league, somewhere around 68%.
Wow. But that's because every pass.
Yeah, maybe. But
some people have a theory on that. It's because he holds the ball too long and he doesn't throw it away. And matter of fact, the 2 highest completion percentage games in his career was when he was sacked 7 times last year against Arizona, 78% completions, and then 6 times this year at St. Louis, 77% completion.
Were the Seahawks wise in giving him that contract?
I think so. It's the market rate for quarterbacks, and you got a guy who took him to 2 Super Bowls, more wins than anybody. I mean, I know completion percentage and sacks, and he's not a 3,000 yard.
Hey, Panthers go to 2 Super Bowls. I'm paying anybody anything. So
well, right.
I'm with you. Right. And I'm with you.
I grew up in Pittsburgh in the 1970s and 80s, and everyone badmouthed Terry Bradshaw and said he was stupid and he wasn't a great quarterback. He won 4 Super Bowls, and that he's in the Hall of Fame because he won 4 Super Bowls. And to me, that is just like a starting pitcher in baseball. I had a manager when I used to cover the Major League Baseball, Ken Maka, the Oakland A's, when we were discussing whether Roger Clemens should win the Cy Young one year, and he was like 24-3, but his ERA was like 5. And Ken Maka said, "Greg, it's about wins and effing losses." And that's
right.
I feel the same thing about a quarterback. And so the long answer to the question is $87.6 million for a guy who took him to 2 Super Bowls. Yeah, I think that
fair enough.
That's very fair. I wanted to ask if this decline in the offensive line started with the trade for Jimmy Graham when Unger left.
It had been bad 2 years before that, and Unger actually missed 10 games last year because of injury. He didn't start the game in Charlotte. Actually, a guy named Steve Schilling, who's not even in the league, was the starting center for the Seahawks that day.
Oh, wow.
I just looked it up before I joined you guys because I couldn't. But their line was a problem before this. The trade for Graham exacerbated it. It just made it worse. And at that position especially, I think, if you trade a guard, or you're not going to be able to trade a guard for Jimmy Graham, but if you trade even a left tackle, Russell Okung, for instance, it's not going to have the effect line across the line, the entire line, that trading a 2-time Pro Bowl center was. Unger was so good that he could make calls without even consulting with Russell Wilson. There were unspoken understanding between the two of them. This year, Wilson's making the line protection calls because Nowak has no experience doing it, and they are also very simplistic in their defensive line calls. They'll break the huddle. They'll make an initial call, Drew Nowak and Wilson will, and they'll stick with it whether it's the right call or not. Whether the defensive front moves, whether they stunt, whether they show blitz or don't show blitz, that they tried to switch in the opener at St. Louis and make counter calls, and it was a complete disaster. 3 guys are going one way, 2 guys are going another. They dunked it, and so now they have a very high schoolish, lower division college system of making an initial call on their initial read. I was talking to Drew Nowak about this last week, the center, and he said it's better to be on the same page, even if it's the wrong page, than to have some guys going one way and some guys going another. So that's what they do, and that's something that teams exploit, and I think Carolina can exploit with a lot of pressure and changes right before the snap.
I want to ask you, too, about two other guys that have been seemingly on the wrong page a little bit. Kerry Williams, he struggled in the secondary. Can Seattle account for his weakness back there?
They need to get pressure on the quarterback to do it, and they also need their safeties to play better. Cam Chancellor had maybe his worst game we've seen ever.
That's what I was going to ask, yeah.
And that really exposed Kerry Williams. The other thing that exposed Williams was the Bengals, unlike almost every team the Seahawks have played in the last 2 seasons, including the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, those teams, opponents, have always thrown underneath the secondary, in front of Sherman and Chancellor and Thomas, with little short, quick passes. It's negated the Seattle pass rush. Well, the Bengals didn't do that. They don't do that to anybody. They throw the ball down the field.
Yeah, A.J. Green deep.
Exactly, and they went right down the seam with Green and with Tyler Eifert. And I think if Carolina learned anything from watching that offensive game film of Cincinnati, it's attack them deep, because there's a lot of technical problems and technique problems with Kerry Williams. He's learning a new system of step. It's called step and kick out here that Pete Carroll teaches, where you're supposed to step laterally and then turn and run with the receivers to stay over the top. And it's something that Williams said he's never done before. It took him about 3 months of the offseason through training camp to get. He had his best game against Detroit against Calvin Johnson, and everyone thought, he's got this technique down. And then he just got roasted by the Bengals. And I had him for 8. He was targeted 8 times. He gave up 2 pass interference penalties that extended 2 drives that the Bengals had to have at the end of the game. And he gave up 3 catches for 51 yards. A 72-yard A.J. Green touchdown that he burned him on was called back by a holding penalty. And then I mentioned Chancellor. He had 10 targets, 7 catches against Chancellor. Now, Pete Carroll came to his defense yesterday and said that the 2 touchdowns Eifert made over the middle, even though Chancellor was near him, were not Chancellor's fault. It was zone defense. But zone defense against the tight end is either one of the 2 safeties. So that tells me that Earl Thomas or Cam Chancellor didn't play at all to their capabilities last week.
Well, it seemed, too, that I was going to ask if Cam Chancellor was showing signs of rust, and where I think you can see this the most is that it seemed that there was communication problems with Cam Chancellor out there. Are there concerns that missed time is part of this?
Not until Sunday in Cincinnati. The first 2 games, he was great, and the defense said they were all on the same page again, and everything was great. But you're right, against Cincinnati, after big plays, and the Seahawks always do this. Whenever they feel like they should never give up a completion, and whenever they even give up one, they start pointing fingers at each other and throwing their hands up in the air. But St. Louis did it. Green Bay did it to a lesser extent than St. Louis did. And then Cincinnati did it, is they exploited the gaps in the coverage between the linebackers and the safeties, about 15 to 20 yards down the field. Chancellor plays so aggressively at the line of scrimmage that it creates an even wider gap than a lot of teams have in the middle of their defense, because a lot of strong safeties don't play that aggressively, that even against the pass, but Chancellor does. So you got about a soft spot of 10 to 15 yards, 20 yards down the field in front of Earl Thomas, who has to play deep as the lone high safety. And I think with Olsen and Carolina's played him so many times the last 3 or 4 years, they know that's where the soft spot in Seattle's defense is.
Last question about the defense from me is Richard Sherman moved around in this game. Usually he stays on his side of the field. You saw him in the slot at one point. You saw him shadowing A.J. Green. Is this something that Carolina may expect to see a little more of? Is this accounting for Kerry Williams? Why is this change?
Yeah, exactly. That was the Kerry Williams Band-Aid plan. And A.J. Green was just going to work in the first quarter on the Seahawks. The Seahawks allowed 152 yards in the first quarter of that game against the Bengals. And so then after the first quarter is when Sherman moved exclusively on Green. Now, he's done this in the past. He did it in Green Bay a little bit. He was actually, for the first time in his career, he was the nickelback, and he covered Cobb in Green Bay. And checked pretty limited Cobb, maybe some short catches, but not a big game at all. So I wouldn't be shocked if he does that, especially if Williams gets off to another poor start. And I think every team from now until Kerry Williams is off the roster is going to target him. And every team in the last 5 years targets the guy that's opposite Richard Sherman. because teams don't usually throw at Sherman. So that's a fact of life. And I think finally, after a couple years of resisting it, the Seahawks are going to do that a lot more than they used to do.
You know, the problem with all this, guys, is that Carolina doesn't have an A.J. Green.
No,
Right.
no.
Or
We don't have we don't have a Tyler Lockett.
You don't have a Kevin Benjamin.
Right.
no, we don't. All right, you guys, I know you're unlimited for time, so my last question, if the other guys don't have any, is...
Oh, but wait a minute. I'm going to interrupt you. You do have a Kevin Norwood, don't you?
We do.
We do. Yes. Who you cut?
And
It's time to unleash him.
we you know, he made one miscue in the was it the game 2, Joey, or game 1?
Yeah,
was it the
game
Jacksonville
2.
game?
That was
Okay, it was
game
game 2.
Houston.
And he's fallen out of favor ever since that one missed catch that led to an interception. But
But we did make that trade with you guys for him.
You
So
did.
yeah.
you guys have struggled in the fourth quarter. Is this game? What's your thoughts about this game and the outcome? What do you see Seattle rebounding against Carolina? What's your prediction?
Well, the numbers at home, the Seahawks are ridiculous at home. They're like 20. I think it's now 30-3 or whatever it is the last 3 or 4 seasons. It's a huge advantage, but this is a weakened offense, not nearly as dynamic and certainly not as strong up front as it was in the 2 games last year against Carolina, especially in the playoffs when Unger was back. And I think from what I've seen of Carolina, their defense is better than it was last year. At least they're not allowing points. So I think
Josh Norman's a difference maker this year.
I've heard that Norman has played even better when Kuechly was out. And that's something that, I mean, you guys have seen these games. They're all knockdown, drag out, 13-9, 16-12.
Pretty close games, yeah.
All close.
Yeah.
And the Seahawks often talk about how the Panthers make it hard for them on the line of scrimmage, both on offense and defense. And that's been the weakness for the Seahawks. If there's ever a time the Panthers will knock off the Seahawks in Seattle, it's this one because of the offensive line. But it's almost, you don't want to say it's a must-win for a 2-time defending NFC champion in early October, but to go 2-4 right now would be, with the way Arizona has played most of the season, it's almost a must-win for them, and especially at home. So I can't see the Seahawks completely folding it up in early October, going 2-4.
Hey, Greg, I appreciate that candor there. One question that I have for you is I've noticed some chatter. I follow a few Seahawks fans, and I've noticed some
that's
chatter.
dangerous.
Yeah, it is. And I've seen, and it's like, I think it's pretty common among every fan base, but things start going a little bad, and they start putting the coach on the hot seat. They start wanting to bench certain players. They start jumping ship. What is the general mood around Seattle around their team? Is optimism still there, or is it starting to get pretty hot around there?
It's hot. I mean, if people could scale the Space Needle, if they allowed them to, they would have been people jumping off the Space Needle this week. They get
impaling themselves on the needle.
Exactly. They start jumping into the water if they lose a first quarter out around here. That's how the expectations have gone through the roof from the last few seasons.
Yeah.
They want to. Everyone out here wants to fire Darrell Bevel, the offensive coordinator, because he can't find Jimmy Graham and can't get him the ball. Well, Darrell Bevel doesn't block. And doesn't matter what plays Darrell Bevel calls, if every 1.3 seconds is the time that Russell Wilson has to throw.
And I got to say, there was one play I was watching Jimmy Graham last week, and Russell Wilson locked in on him. He was going to go to him. He was going out into a route, and he tripped over his own feet and fell into his defender. It's not all on play calling. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Here, let me jump in real quick and ask you before you go, because we just got a good listener question that I think you'd be particularly attuned to answering. Jason Boyd asked this: do you think the Carolina Panthers got Shaq Thompson to stop mobile quarterbacks like Wilson by rushing him off the edge, forcing him to use only half the field?
That's what he did for the University of Washington out here, and that he came to Washington as a safety. I think we talked about this before. And then out of the necessity, they moved him to linebacker. And at linebacker, he was, even as an outside linebacker, and he played some inside too, he was a spy. for the quarterbacks, and he would run laterally across the field, sideline to sideline, wherever the quarterback went. I think Carolina would be wise to do that again in this game, and I don't know their defensive schemes and how they've been using Shaq that much, but if there's one guy on that field that's probably equipped to corral Russell Wilson as well as anybody in the NFC, if not the NFL, it's a guy like Shaq Thompson. The way he can run, his size. I know that usually inside linebacker, middle linebacker types, or even strong safeties become shadows. The Seahawks have not run the read option as much with Wilson keeping as they had last year, and I think some of that is a function of the offensive line. But on pass plays, the Bengals were using inside linebackers to do the spies, and Wilson got outside of them. So if I were to, without knowing their system, if I was Carolina, I would put Shaq Thompson and say, you go everywhere Russell Wilson goes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Greg, we'd like to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy night to join us, and we look forward to talking with you again in the future. Can you tell our listeners how they can find your work?
Yeah, thank you. The newstribune.com is our online presence. And on Twitter, I'm at GBellSeattle.
And I got to tell you, for somebody that follows Greg, if you want to keep up with what's going on with the Seahawks, give him a follow. Give him a shout-out. Ask him a question. He'll answer you back. So we appreciate your time, man. We really do.
I appreciate that, guys. Thanks a lot, and enjoy the week.
Right on. Thank you. Worst of luck to you this week, but great luck the rest of the year.
Well, hey, I've got no horse in the race. I'm from Pittsburgh, remember?
There you go. That's right. There you go. Right on. So you were happy last night when they beat the Chargers.
I was pretty ecstatic. My son and I were high-fiving quite a bit. Gutsy call, huh?
Yeah.
As an aside, how many coaches in the league would have done maybe half or less? Would have kicked
or less,
yeah,
definitely,
so.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Bill Belichick is the only one I think has the job security to do that.
Exactly.
Right.
Would Ron Rivera have kicked a field goal there?
Yeah, he would have punted.
Yeah, there you go. We'll see. Hey, we'll see you this Sunday, man. Have a great night. Thanks again, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
You got it.
All right, that
was awesome, guys.
Gregg Bell from the News Tribune, Tacoma, Washington. Thank you, everyone, for chiming in on Twitter and YouTube. We get to more questions as we can throughout the show. Lot of insight there. You know, I tell you, that guy, he really knows, not only is he really an interactive, friendly guy, he knows his stuff. And he was pretty candid about the Seattle Seahawks right now.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's keep on plowing on through the show, guys. We've got to get into, finish that thought.
Funny. Sometimes I just don't get people. Human beings are so weird. Who talks in front of a camera by themselves for fun?
It's exasperating.
It's a good idea.
These ideas.
Some of these things that you use every day. Who's the guy or a girl that was like,
good idea.
Good idea.
We're going to keep it quick. Joe, if Marshawn Lynch is Skittles, Jonathan Stewart is?
If Marshawn Lynch is Skittles and Jonathan Stewart would be whatchamacallit.
All right. Mel, if Marshawn Lynch is Skittles, Jonathan Stewart is?
Based on the performance this year, I would say Milk Duds.
Dang, you stole mine.
That was a great answer.
You stole mine. That's what I was going to do. If Marshawn Lynch is Skittles, Jonathan Stewart is Mounds.
Of poo.
Yes. Okay.
We're still waiting for the TVs, Jay Stu. Have you seen him on Twitter? Every touchdown he gets this year.
I know they're going to give a Vizio away or something like that.
Don't give it away any TV yet. No.
At this point, you might as well not pick the cheapest TV on earth. You could pick the most expensive one. You're only going to give away one.
Hopefully.
Okay. Joe, over the next 4 games, the Panthers will go. We play Seattle, Philly, Indy, Green Bay. 3 of them at home, 1 on the road.
I believe over the next 4 games, the Panthers will go 3-1.
Ooh.
Mel, over the next 4 games, the Panthers will go
2-2.
Joe, who's the loss?
Green Bay.
Mel, who's the loss?
Green Bay, and we're giving away our predictions later, but I'm going to say Seattle.
All right, I think that's fair. I think conservatively you go 2-2, and conservatively meaning honestly, it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be hard to beat Seattle. I think we can. It really, there's one thing that's going to determine if we beat Seattle or not, and that is our defensive line.
Yeah.
That's it. It's that simple. We haven't been able to get pass rush on the guys we're supposed to, i.e. the New Orleans Saints game.
Here's my fear. Dallaire goes and rushes like a beast, right?
And Wilson gets outside.
But you're right. He over-rushes, and Wilson takes off for 25 yards down the sideline.
But that's what Jason Boyd is saying there is you got Shaq out there. We'll see a lot of Shaq out. A lot of Shaq Thompson. You got to like this. Shaq Thompson's got some playing experience in the last 2 games. Last 3 games.
And one thing we know he has is speed.
Turnovers is going to be the difference in this game, guys. If Cam doesn't turn it over, if Cam Chancellor isn't the man in this game, we win. Cam Chancellor is the man, though. I got to tell
Twitter breaks. First goes to @SportsGuyShow over the next 4 games. The Panthers.
He's a good follow, by the way.
We'll go 3-1. Tell us who that one loss is. Just Joan.
Oh, the big crook. Yeah.
Joan with the best tweet. The tweet of the year. Marshawn equals Skittles. J Stu equals a 0 bar.
Nice.
You go, Just Jones. What's that commercial say? Where that girl that's in the military, and she's in the wedding dress, she's standing up, and she's just like, boom, and walks off. That's just Jones right there.
Jones says my fantasy football team might be a 0, but I just turned hero. I'm 0-5, Joan. So I don't know how you're doing, but I saw you 2 weeks ago in Sad Zone.
She's having fun.
Gosh, that was such a.
That was great.
@Sports Guy says Packers is the loss. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wow, fantastic. What a great finish that thought this week. Joe, it's so great that I feel like I should go and buy a bunch of random shit tonight on the internet.
Which you have done on a regular basis.
When you do that, you need to make sure to go to CarolinaCatChronicles.com and look for the shop link at the top, and it will take you to Amazon, where you can do all your shopping and pay the regular price you would. No extra cost, no fees. You just do it through our website, and Amazon is nice enough to give us a little kickback, so we can in turn spend it on our fan base.
So we could actually buy 1,000 0 bars and get like 1%.
And one thing that we can buy is just like what we bought this week. Who did we buy it for? The guy who won the narrowest margin of victory this week won a Panthers Snuggie, chilling in his Snuggie, turning to MTV and learning how to ducky. Who was that? Was that him?
That's Brandon Truesdale.
Yes.
Brandon.
That's right.
He's the Truesdale, the truth. Joe, me and Joe said on the Fantasy Football Podcast tonight that he needs to put a picture of him in a Snuggie in footy pajamas for the website.
Absolutely.
Footy pajamas, the ones that you wore when you were a kid that zip all the way up. Guys, I think this is, before we jump into fact or fiction, because we went over with Gregg Bell, but I do want to talk a little bit about your feelings coming off the bye week. The Panthers have a lot to prove, guys. We're on the road. Seattle, the kind of common foe the guys that we've never been able to get after 4 times we've played them in 3 seasons. We're 0-4. They've all been close. On top of that, we're 0-4 coming off the bye week. You know, we haven't played. We've been declared by many, and and probably not wrongfully, the worst 4-0 team. We're not going to apologize for being 4-0, but Joey, what are really the stakes coming off the bye? Is this meaningful to you, or is this just another week?
No, I think it means something. It means 2 things. We need to get over that winless streak after the byes, and we need to beat Seattle. Seattle has been a thorn in our side. I think it's at a certain point it becomes psychological, and we need to beat them, and then we'll have killed 2 birds with 1 stone. We'd have beaten a team that always gets us, and we'd have gotten the win after the bye week, and we'll be ready to roll. If we can beat Seattle, we have an outside shot at going 4-0 in these next 4 games.
I just saw that Bleacher Report picked us to win over the Seahawks, and
I heard they're changing their name to that Homer Report.
Amber Nicole tweeted this, which she's not watching the show. I'm just perusing Twitter. I just want to ask Amber how many times she had to click next or next slide to find out that was the pick. Now, what do you think the stakes are for the Panthers coming off the bye, Seattle? Is this something that you're putting a lot on, like Joe?
Honestly, I'm not. I think all the pressure's on Seattle. Like Gregg Bell said, if they lose, they're going 2-4. If we lose, we go 4-1, and we lost to Seattle in Seattle, where they're 30-3 over the last couple of years. So if we lose, it's not totally unexpected, and it's not the end of the year. It would be so sweet if we did, because another thing you didn't mention is that's at stake is keeping pace with Atlanta, who plays New Orleans on Thursday night. So they're probably going to go 6-0 after this week. So that's pretty frightening. So it's an important game.
There's nothing that makes me more mad. That makes me even more mad than hitting next slide on Bleacher Report. Which, by the way, I don't even read the Bleacher Report because of that crap.
Thinking of the Falcons at 6-0, I mean, I might have to go vomit and then come back and join the rest of the show.
I'm not scared of the Falcons.
I'm not scared of them. It just makes me want to vomit the thought that their fan base gets to enjoy 6-0.
Barely beat Dallas without anybody, right? They barely beat.
They're pretty good though. They
barely beat the Redskins. Let's not act like this. First of all, before we talk about the Panthers being the worst 4-0 team, let's not act like Atlanta isn't that far away. Even though some of those victories, they put up some good offensive numbers. New York, didn't they just lose to San Francisco?
No, they won.
Did they win at the last second?
They came back and beat them at the end, yeah.
Okay, I didn't even watch. I didn't stay up to the end of the game. You're talking about an Eagles team that's garbage. The Redskins team, which Clip Brock is still mad at the C3 Power Rankings for being ranked 27. And they're 2-3 right now, 2-2 when we ranked them. Let's not act like they've been beating any world beaters out there.
They did beat the pants off the Texans, who we struggled with at home. So, you give the devil their due. They've been pretty daggone good. Now, one thing going against them, and I don't wish an injury on anybody, but Julio Jones is very doubtful for Thursday night. And without Julio Jones, that team is cornbread.
I hope he's not playing when we play.
You know what? Joe would know, because it's going to be after week 12. Like, he's totally, and he's injury prone. But, all right, great show tonight. Let's keep plowing through, guys. Let's get in and jump into facts. Backdoor Fiction! we will never change that soundbite, no matter what you think it says. Right? Fact or fiction tonight. First, I'm going to start with Aaron. The Panthers will get more sacks than the Seahawks. Fact or fiction?
Straight fact. One of the great surprises of this year has been our offensive line. And one of the amazements of this year has been Seattle's line. So we definitely will get more sacks than Seahawks in this game.
Joey, fact or fiction, the Panthers will get more sacks than the Seahawks?
I think it is a fact. I think the way that the Panthers' offensive line has stood tough so far this year, I think they continue that because teams that get to play together longer at like a unit, like an offensive line, will only get better as the season progresses.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say fact, but not as straight as Mel is shooting it. It's going to be a close fact on this one because that Michael Orr has not been impenetrable, right?
But he has not been a Byron Bell.
No, he has not. But here's the problem: is the Panthers' pass rush has not been particularly well played. Has not been good.
Ryan Delaire.
Jared Allen has not played again. He's out again in practice. His leg is numb. So we drafted a one-legged. I bet we traded or whatever we did for Jared Allen, a one-legged man that can't feel his feet. We've got our pass rush is not good. Our offensive line is better than theirs. Their pass rush is good, and their offensive line is trash. This is a recipe, guys, for a very disappointing pass rush from the Panthers again. We got to see some creativeness in the way that we bring pressure. I like what Jason Boyd was saying with getting Shaq on the edge a little. Maybe we could see a little corner and safety bliss timely. We're going to have to be creative here and take some shots and really believe in our secondary in this one.
We really have to stop the run. That's the difference in the game.
Right.
Yes, we do.
And that's something we've been good at until week 4.
Yeah, that's Doug Martin. Yeah.
Right, that's right. Okay, next fact or fiction. Josh Norman is better than Richard Sherman. Aaron.
That's a straight fact. Josh Norman, he's the man right now. I really wish that Gettleman would get that man signed and get him signed soon. Break his pledge about not doing deals in the middle of the year. The price tag's only going up. He's the man.
Joe, Josh Norman is better than Richard Sherman.
I think if you look at the right now, then yes. Right now, Josh Norman is the best corner in the league, arguably.
I'm going to say I'm with you. Fact, Josh Norman gave one of our writers, JP, gave him the X sign for the fail on an article he wrote about the contract of the Josh Norman contract. Just gave him a straight fail. Yeah, he tweeted. JP tweeted.
$9.5 million is not good for Josh Norman. I guess that's what he's saying.
Sounds like Josh Norman believes right now he's the best corner in the league. You guys have said he's playing like it. Right now, I think at this moment, he is playing to that point. And if you guys remember when Richard Sherman was at that period 2 years ago where he was just untouchable, he was doing the same exact things Josh Norman is doing, but it seems like Josh Norman may be doing a hair more in the versatility.
But you know what? One point is a couple years ago he had a lot better cast around him. Sherman did. Now he's got Kerry Williams, who is absolutely struggling in his role. This year we have who? We have the old Mr. Reliable, Peanut Tillman, on the other side, and you got Ben Wickery manning it in the nickel package. So it's also a little bit of we got a pretty complete secondary this year compared to last year.
Yeah, but not in the manner though not to the degree that Seattle was.
That's true. No doubt. No doubt.
I mean, we're much better, and that's helping Josh Norman. But he's still just shouldering the whole world and like winning games by himself.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Right now, what he has done through 4 games is one of the best stretches for a corner ever. He's got a better passer rating, as in pass, like keeping the quarterback passer rating low, than damn Revis. And that man just is a model of consistency. So hats off to Josh Norman. All right, last fact or fiction. Sean McDermott said the Seahawks defense is better than ever. Fact or fiction, Mel?
I'm going to have to go with fiction, man. I don't think the Legion of Boom is quite what they used to be, but yeah, they're still a daggum good defense. We can't go in there and just expect we're going to roll over these guys, but I'm going to go with fiction on that one.
Joey, fact or fiction?
I'm going to have to go fiction as well. This group is definitely not better than they have been in the past. I mean, even Gregg Bell said that this group isn't as good as they were last year in the Super Bowl. So, no, that's a big, big, fat no-go.
McDermott trying to talk up the opponent. I like that, though. I like that.
It is the right thing to say, yes.
Yeah, well... Yeah, I guess it's the only thing you can say, but it's total fiction. 2 years ago, they're the number 1 defense in the league, barely ahead of the number 2 defense in the league, the Carolina Panthers. And you're talking about barely ahead. Both of those teams weren't allowing Jack Diddley. Right. You know what I'm saying? You're talking 16, 15 points a game, and they still out-edged them. So not even close. All right, fellas. That is about the C3 podcast. We've got one last segment that we like to do here, and it is the Ice Up Picks of the Week. Joey, are you ready?
Yes.
Or do you need a moment?
I need one moment, yeah.
Mel, you come prepared. Always.
I come prepared. I don't have a picture for you tonight, but
it's what cold month as ice.
What month is this?
This is October.
This is October, which is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I'm going to be in that same ballpark, all right, but not right in there. But cancer and anything close to cancer, illnesses in this world touch a lot of lives. I don't think there's anybody who hasn't been touched by that. Our main man, the freaking Puerto Rican, has dealt with cancer in his life, and he's battled. He's probably the toughest SOB that I know. 32 years ago tonight, I was in a hospital, had a brain tumor. It was not cancerous, but it was benign brain tumor. I went through an 8-hour surgery, had 3 blood transfusions. I was given a 50% chance of living. I was given a less than 50% chance of being able to walk again. I was told, hey, you're not going to be able to walk again without extensive physical therapy. You may or may not be able to, I'm sure you can on this podcast. You can tell if you're watching the YouTube. I have a little bit of a funny smile. That's just kind of me. If you're listening on the podcast out there, I've got kind of a, if you look at the emojis, kind of the emoji with the half smile. That's kind of me.
The winky face?
The winky. No, not the winky face. Mr. No, not the winky face, but there is an emoji with a half smile. I'm Mr. Half Smile emoji. You could call me winky face, but I was called Popeye in middle school. So I've been through a lot in my life as far as tumors and those kinds of things, and God has been really good to me. There's a lot of people out there that had it a lot worse fighting cancer, and people that didn't survive, people that have lost loved ones. D'Angelo Williams lost his mother last year. So what I have to say is 2 things. Number 1, praise God for everything that you have. Enjoy today. And for everybody out there, I think we all can agree, for cancer and for tumors and for lupus disease and for all of these types of things out there, those diseases and plagues on society can ice up. So for cancer and everything like you, ice up, son.
Hear, hear. That's a
hear,
pretty good thing.
I was gonna say, if you don't believe he's got a funny smile, let me just loop this audio real quick, and we'll show you.
Oh no, you didn't. No, you didn't.
You just gotta drop the echo on it. My man is like dropping acid back there.
It looked like it, didn't it? Yeah.
Joey.
All right,
What do you got?
this is gonna take a while here, so I'm gonna get started on it.
Oh, good Lord. I'm
Yeah.
settling it.
This week, my ISEP pick goes to a quarterback who was the first overall draft selection in 2009. In high school, he won the UIL 4A Division I Texas State Championship. In 2005, he was awarded Best Arm and EA Sports Elite 11 Quarterback Camp MVP. Now, before having taken one snap at the collegiate level, Mel Kiper predicted he would one day be the first overall selection in the NFL. It was such a surefire, can't-miss draft pick. He was given a mega deal of 6 years and a guarantee of over $41 million ever before taking a snap at the professional level. My problem is with the talent surrounding this talented individual. He has weapons in spades, and yet he has been a disappointment as a professional. Talk about letting your talent go to waste. When I think of the weapons at his disposal and how underwhelming this team is, I get sick. If Cam Newton was fortunate enough just to have one of the weapons this quarterback has, we would be talking about a Carolina Panthers dynasty. What do you as Panther fans think? How good would Carolina be with wide receiver Charles Johnson as the number one receiver? Then add Golden Tate for good measure, and the Panthers would be multiple-time world champions.
His name's Calvin Johnson, sorry.
Oh, I meant Calvin. I don't know why I said Charles.
We were talking about Charles Johnson earlier tonight,
That's why. Matthew Stafford is getting my ISEP pick this week because he was benched for Dan Orlovsky in the second half of this past week's game versus Arizona.
Sounds like a jerky.
Right. This was after throwing 3 interceptions in the first half of a game. Stafford has thrown for 500 yards in a season. He's the 4th player to do so, leaving no doubt the talent is there. He needs to get it together and get the ball to his weapons, and he'll find himself on the field for a whole game instead of a half. So, Matthew Stafford, ISEP, son.
Nice. Well done. Was I the only one sitting here going, is he going to say Matt Stafford or Sam Bradford? Like, I was sitting there going, once you started talking about the money, I should have known $50 million was the magic guaranteed number for Sam Bradford.
Right.
So basically, Sam Bradford's message to you, Matt Stafford, is you got underpaid.
Exactly right.
I'm not going to come with an ice-up pick tonight, guys. I'm coming with a bottoms-up pick.
There you go.
And this goes to my Chicago Cubbies.
Yeah, buddy.
They did it.
First time ever.
Beat the Cardinals in the playoffs. So F you red birds. I hate all birds that are red, including the cardinal, which is the state bird of North Carolina. Get rid of them all. Red birds are not allowed in the Dunn household. Congrats to the Cubbies and Joe Madden and all those young kids that are too stupid and young and dumb and full of you-know-what to realize that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, and it's amazing. And God bless them, and go win the dang World Series. And if it's the end of days, then so be it.
That was the first series clinching win the Cubs have ever had in franchise history.
And they're like 100 years old.
Jeez.
That's pretty old. They're the 100-year-old virgins.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Oh, man, I hear you.
All right, guys. Tell them what you got going on this week and how they can reach you. Start with one of y'all.
I have two Panther bars in the Charleston area that are all-out Panther bars. We get the biggest TV. We get the Panthers game, the only one that's broadcast over the PA system in the establishments. So check us out. Southside 17 at Tanger, and over in Mount Pleasant, we're at RB Seafood. And just a great time at both places. Great food, great service. Check us out.
Mel, you're in Portland, but where can they find your work?
I'm in Portland tonight. I'm in Seattle tomorrow. I'm all over the place. I'm everywhere you want to be. But you can catch me on Twitter at Panthers Drafter. We'll talk Panthers football anytime. Go check us out at CarolinaScatChronicles.com. Let me give a shout out to all of our writers out there, man. We got a great bunch of writers that are doing a heck of a job. Go check them out. Some people are really doing some good stuff. Just go check us out anytime. We got power rankings coming out on Thursday. Check those out as well.
Yeah, big story up on C3 right now about Devin Funchess. Did it go wrong? Is he underperforming? All these questions answered by J-Ray. Big assessments of the team after the bye week by Cassidy. So lots of stuff happening, even though things are quiet on the Panther front. But you know who's never quiet? That's the professor on the C3 Carolina Panthers podcast.
Ain't that the truth?
Every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. I'll bring it to you. My Cubbies are winning. The Panthers are going to beat the damn Seahawks. We didn't do our picks.
We didn't do our predictions. We got to do that real quick. Got to do it real quick.
No. You picked him as a winner.
I did. I picked him as a winner.
What's the score?
Score is going to be 17-16 Carolina.
Mel, you picked him as a loser.
I did. I got to say, we're 0-4 coming out of the bye. We're 0-4 against Seattle. Going into Seattle, I think you got to be a homer to say we're going to win. I hope we win. Let's don't confuse predictions with rooting or who you're pulling for, but I'm going to say 22-19 Seattle.
Joe, I'm going with, 12-9. Carolina on the road. Actually, I think we'll score more. I really do. I'm thinking somewhere like 20-17. Carolina Panthers breaking the streak. Call me a homer. That's right, because that's what I am. This is the C3 podcast brought to you by Carolina Cat Chronicles every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. where you catch the latest Panther fan news or fan news from the fan perspective. Check us out, iTunes, Stitcher. Tell your friends. Tweet us. Check our work. We will see you next week as the Panthers going to get that win in Seattle.
That's right.
Boom. Go eat a zero bar.
Boom. Zero.